welcome to this, the first Socratic Club meeting of this academic year. For those of you unfamiliar with this organization, the very first Socratic Club was started by C.S. Lewis at Oxford University in 1941 with the goal of providing an open forum for the discussion of intellectual difficulties associated with religion and with Christianity in particular. 6 years ago, a group of students established a similar organization on the Oregon State campus. Each year, the club features 6 debates, which provide a forum for opposing points of view on subjects of contemporary debate at the intersection of Christianity and contemporary culture. Tonight's debate, titled, "Is Christianity Good for the World?", is part of Cicero's Podium, Great Issues Debate Series, administered by the Intercollegiate Studies Institute. Each debate seeks to exemplify civil discourse, promote genuine intellectual diversity, and encourage the rising generation to think about the people and the ideas that have formed our experience in ordered liberty. To watch other Cicero's Podium debates, or to become a member of ISI, please visit www.isi.org. This debate focuses on what is arguably one of the most important questions in the culture wars of today. A number of recent books, such as Sam Harris's The End of Faith, Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion, and Christopher Hitchens' God is Not Great, argue that religion in general, and Christianity in particular, constitute a harmful force in society, fostering intolerance, anti-intellectualism, and the oppression of women. The conservative author Dinesh D'Souza, and cultural scholar, and the libertarian, skeptic writer, and social scientist Michael Shermer will discuss these and related issues tonight. In this debate, we will follow this format. Each speaker will have approximately 25 minutes to give his monologue. We will follow this with a series of questions for roughly 15 minutes. This will be followed by the time for the audience to question the speakers, and finally, the speakers will give their closing remarks. Before I introduce the first speaker, I'm going to lay down a few house rules. Because of problems in the past, we ask that you not distribute flyers from anybody other than the Socratic Club or ISI during this debate. Also, please take this opportunity to turn off your cell phones. This is being recorded. And finally, we ask that you sit back, hold on to your questions until it's your time, and enjoy the discussion. Our first speaker tonight is Dinesh D'Souza. He's a fellow at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University. Investor Business Daily called him one of the top young public policy makers in the country. And the New York Times Magazine named him one of America's most influential conservative thinkers. Before joining the Hoover Institution, Mr. D'Souza was the John M. Olin Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. From 1985 to 1987, he was managing editor of Policy Review. In 97 to 98, he served as senior policy analyst at the Reagan White House. His books include the New York Times bestseller, What's So Great About America? His 1991 book, Illiberal Education, was the first study to publicize the phenomenon of political correctness. His latest book, What's So Great About Christianity, came out this week. D'Souza's articles have appeared in New York Times, Wall Street Journal, The Atlantic Monthly, Vanity Fair, New Republic, and National Review. Mr. D'Souza.
Thank you very much. I see I have a wide podium. I guess I didn't have to wear pants. I'm very pleased, very honored to be here. I want to thank ISI and the Socratic Club for putting this event together. It's not a typical event on campus these days. To take issues that deal with religion, bring them to the forefront, and fill an auditorium of this size is a tribute to the organizers and also to you. Our time in this debate is so limited. I have so much to say. I will try in my opening remarks to adopt the motto that King Henry VIII used with one of his wives. He said, "I won't keep you very long." We're here to talk about what is in some ways a universal but also a personal subject. I thought I would tell you just a little bit about myself and my way of thinking about this, and then also a little bit about the kind of approach I'm going to adopt in this debate. I'm a native of Bombay, India. I come from a part of India that's called Goa, which used to be, for many centuries, a Portuguese colony. I once asked my grandfather how our family became Christian, and he answered in 3 words: the Portuguese Inquisition. And so I discovered quite young in life that Christianity came to me, in a sense, at the point of a bayonet. And then again, interestingly, as I grew older and looked into it a little bit, I discovered that the Indians who converted to Christianity, most of them came from the so-called Dalit or untouchable class. So, frozen as they were in a bottom-rung status in life from which they were, no matter what their efforts, unable to escape, many people found in Christianity a doctrine of dignity and an assertion of the worth of individual life, and this was a powerful incentive for lots of low-caste Indians to flee into the arms of the missionaries. So it's possible that some bayoneting was involved, but it was also the case that the Indians found a great appeal and have remained over the centuries by their own choice, Christian. I'm kind of inspired by the idea of the Socratic Club and the idea of having a debate which is not just a bit of a shouting match. A week from today I'm debating Christopher Hitchens, the author of God Is Not Great, in New York City, and he's a little bit of a spear chucker and I'm a little bit of a spear returner. But I think tonight I'm going to attempt, at least to initiate, a debate in which we genuinely are struggling to kind of get at the truth. The Socratic approach, I think, is a very good one for a university community. Now, we're talking about the role of Christianity in the West and in the world. And right away we realize that even though Christianity is a strong force in America, it is not a strong force in the public life of America. You could come from Mars and walk around America, watch the TV shows, go to the public square, and in some ways be very surprised to learn that the majority of Americans are in fact Christian. You don't see that much evidence of it in American public life. There is also, I want to suggest, in American intellectual life, a prejudice against Christianity. And this is not an overt prejudice. You don't have professors openly denouncing Christianity, scorning the resurrection, but if you look at the very language of the way we describe history, for example, the Christian era, the Dark Ages. The Christian era followed by the Renaissance, the Enlightenment. Enlightenment from what? Presumably from the prejudices implanted in Christianity. So all I'm trying to suggest is that the very vocabulary in which we think about history implants in our minds this idea of an era dominated by low and bad and dark things, followed by a sequence of wonderful things culminating, if you will, in the present. This sort of simple-minded view of history I'm going to try to contest. I'm also going to try to contest another idea that many people have, which is that as society becomes more modern, more urbanized, more educated, more enlightened, it becomes more secular. If you look at the example of Europe, you seem to have some corroboration of the secular thesis, but America is at the forefront of modernity, and America is a lot less secular than Europe. Moreover, the rapidly modernizing countries in the world today, India and China, are not only religious, but becoming evidently more so. I want to zoom in now and look a little bit at Christianity's role in the world, and specifically, what would our world be like if we didn't have Christianity? I think of Western civilization as shaped by two pillars. On the one hand, Athens, and on the other hand, Jerusalem. By Athens, I mean classical reason. I'm thinking specifically of Greece and pre-Christian Rome. And by Jerusalem, I mean Judaism and Christianity. Without these two pillars, we would not have Western civilization as we know it, and the main institutions of the West have emerged out of a creative dynamic between Athens and Jerusalem. Very often in the academy, we give a lot of credit to Athens. We have an appropriately reverential attitude toward Athens. But we have a somewhat more scornful attitude toward Jerusalem. We underestimate Jerusalem's contribution, and this is particularly so because Athens, as we know it, is known to us through Jerusalem. In other words, the Aristotle that we know is not necessarily Aristotle as the ancient Greeks saw him, but Aristotle as he has been perceived, if you will, through the lens of Christian history and Christian culture. If you think of the life of the ancient Greeks, it was in a way quite barbaric. It was a society for all its accomplishments in philosophy and art, accomplishments, I remind you, reserved to an infinitesimal portion of the population. These were societies dominated by slavery. They were societies in which human life had very little value. When the Spartans left their children, whether they were feeble or unfit, on the countryside to die of cold, they didn't stand out particularly for doing so. The attitude was ultimately a relatively low sense of human worth. Women were treated very poorly in ancient Greece and Rome. They were seen as a sort of appendage of their husbands. Aristotle, who's relatively enlightened on this matter, basically said that in the slave, reason is completely absent. In the child, reason is present, but undeveloped. In women, reason is present, but unused. And this reflects, if you will, the widespread perception of the ancient world. Christianity comes along and introduces some very new values. For the first time, human life takes on a sort of new worth. For the first time, the ordinary person, who mattered very little in Greece and Rome, suddenly becomes the object of a certain dignity, and the pursuits of the ordinary person, family life, trade, industry, bettering yourself, having, if you will, a decent life,